whispers of a strange event began to circulate in the shadowy canyons of the Pacific Northwest, where dense trees concealed its countless secrets from prying eyes. In 1924, a terrifying incident occurred in what would infamously be known as Ape Canyon. The terrain was rugged, featuring towering trees and echoing canyons. A group of miners searching for precious, rare minerals ended up in a mysterious and isolated place. Gathered around their small, flickering fire, the miners watched as the sun set and long shadows formed around them on the rocks. They had no idea that their presence had aroused something old and terrible. What emerged from Ape Canyon that night became a story that is shared to this day over campfires around the world. A haunting story of terror and a mystery that may still lie in those dense woods. The Ape Canyon tragedy of 1924 is still calling to anyone brave enough to step into the unknown. Welcome, all my creepy little weirdos. You have found yourself in a place for the unknown and the unexplained. My name is Christina, and I'll be your tour guide through the realms of mystery, experiences with the paranormal, and just the generally strange. This is Horror, History, and Haunting. Ape Canyon is a gorge on the southeast shoulder of Mount St. Helens in the state of Washington, which it runs along the border of the Plains of Abraham. The Ape Canyon incident of 1924 was one of history's first and most famous terrifying attacks by creatures that would ultimately be known around the world. While gold prospecting in Ape Canyon in Mount St. Helens, Washington, near the Lewis River, Fred Beck and 4 other men noticed signs of what they referred to as visitors surrounding their cabin. They had heard noises in the vicinity at night and found some really enormous tracks resembling humans left outside on the ground. They reported hearing thumping sounds that resembled chest thumping, and another said that after hearing a whistle on one of the ridges above them, they heard another whistle on the ridge across from them in response. Beck and one of the other men saw a big ape-like thing peering at them from behind a large pine tree as they went to a nearby spring to collect water. They assessed its height to be about as tall as Shaquille O'Neal for comparison. It was described as having a very dark brown color fur. It ducked under the tree and then raised its head to observe them once more. With his rifle up, one of the men fired at the thing, thinking he had just grazed its skull. However, it fled and hid from view, so nobody knows. There was another one that Beck saw standing along a canyon wall. He claimed to have shot it in the back and saw it plummet into a ravine. Even though the men planned to leave the region first thing in the morning, they may have believed that the event was resolved after they shot the one that fell into the ravine, because the other ones just kind of ran off. So that evening, they camped with their rifles close at hand. A loud thump against the cabin wall startled the miners just as darkness descended. The force of the impact shaking the cabin and breaking loose some of the chinking and raining it into one of the man's laps as he was trying to rest. Chinking is a type of sealant material that is used to fill gaps in between the logs in a cabin. Everybody on instinct, of course, reached for their weapon. There was a lot of rustling outside and the sound of big, heavy feet stomping around. Through the gaps in the logs, one of the men looked out. He thought they were 3 monsters, but based on the noises they heard, they said that they thought there were many, many more in the area. In an effort to crack open the cabin, the monsters were beating at the walls, beating on the door, and hurtling huge boulders onto the roof. And one of these creatures even reached through the chinking and through the logs and vainly attempted to seize an axe that was propped up there. Fortunately for these men, the cabin was built sturdy enough to withstand the barrage that the creatures had pummeled it with, and it also had no windows for the creatures to use to try to gain entry to the cabin. There were only brief silences throughout the night as the attacks persisted. The guys also asserted that they only fired at the creatures when they were under attack, ceasing when the fighting subsided in hopes that the creatures would eventually realize that the firing would end as soon as the attack stopped. The animals finally gave up in the early morning hours as the sun rose. They apparently attacked for approximately 5 hours that night. When the men walked outside in early morning sunshine, they discovered a significant number of footprints everywhere. and a strip of wood from between two logs was actually stripped off, like they were trying to get through the logs that way. They saw, seeing the damage and all the footprints and the big stones outside, they hurried out of there. They grabbed up as much of the gear as they could. They loaded up and they just bolted, never to return. Subsequently, the men decided not to share their story with anyone because they were afraid people would think they were crazy. But after one of them told the story, it eventually got leaked to the media. Then others started hearing about it and started looking for the apes in the surrounding region. The Big Ape Hunt of 1924 was the name of the event. Beck repeatedly vowed that his account was true. After the incident in 1924, the canyon was given the new moniker Ape Canyon and is deeply ingrained as definitely the first documented encounter with a cryptid that would later be formally named Bigfoot because of the imprints left in the mud. Another story that added to the early beginnings of the Bigfoot legend lore happened in the fall of 1958 to a guy by the name of Jerry Crew. He was a rough bulldozer operator for a nearby logging business in the heart of the enigmatic and impenetrable Six Rivers National Forest in Humboldt County, California. He would eventually discover something that would become internationally famous. For Crew, it was just like any other day, working his bulldozer across the tough terrain to clear a path for the logging operations there. He had no idea that on this day he would usher in a phenomenon that would become a major part of American mythology. Working his way through the mud, Crew came across a sequence of massive footprints in the mud. They were an incredible 16 inches long. The experienced bulldozer operator was intrigued and perplexed by the strangely human-like footprints that were buried deep in the soft dirt. When he promptly informed his colleagues, those who had previously seen identical tracks made startling statements confirming this. Rumors circulated among the logging crew about strange happenings, such as a gigantic 450-pound barrel, kind of like an oil drum, moving for no apparent reason around the site at night when nobody was there. The men who worked for the logging company started calling the mysterious person who was causing all these unusual things Bigfoot. At first, Crew thought it was all just a big joke, but his doubts started disappearing when more of these enormous footprints kept showing up at the site. He made a decision to get in touch with the Humboldt Times reporter, Andrew Gonzoli. Captivated by the tale, Gonzoli spoke with lumberjacks and wrote articles concerning the mysterious footprints. He coined the term Bigfoot in his reporting to refer to the tracks, as well as the local legend about big hairy creatures that they referred to as wild men prowling in the woods. The phrase immediately took off and became associated with the elusive species, making large tracks in northern California at the time. One of the footprints was molded in plaster to strengthen the finding even more. On October 6, 1958, Crew carrying the cast triumphantly appeared on the front page of the Humboldt Times. As major media outlets, including the esteemed New York Times and Los Angeles Times, began contacting Gonzoli, the story picked up steam and spread like wildfire. The once quiet village of Willow Creek in Humboldt County were catapulted into the public eye when the Bigfoot craze began. Some still referring to them as the Bigfoot capital of the world. Their name will live on in American folklore and cryptozoology history. So, what do you think? Are Bigfoots real? Have you ever encountered one yourself? I look forward to hearing your stories down in the comments. I check all my comments. As always, thanks for watching. Good night and sweet dreams. Bye-bye.